The origins of the ruling dynasty at Mutapa went back to the first half of the 15th century. Oral tradition has it that the first Mwene was a warrior prince named Yasimba Motuta from a southern Shona kingdom, sent to find new sources of salt in the north. Prince Motuta found his salt among the Tabara, a Shona subdivision who were prominent elephant hunters. They conquered. A capital was established 350 kilometers north of Great Zimbabwe at Mount Fura by the Zambezi. The empire was expanded by Motuta's successor, Matupe. He extended this kingdom into a great empire encompassing most of the lands between Tabara and the Indian Ocean. The Mwere Mutapa became very wealthy by exploiting copper from Zederugwi and ivory from the Middle Zambezi. This expansion weakened the Tawa Kingdom, the southern Shona state from which Motuta and his dynasty originated. Mwene Mutapa Matupe's armies overran the kingdom of the Manika, as well as the coastal kingdoms of Ketef and Madanda. By the time the Portuguese arrived on the coast of Mozambique, the Mutapa kingdom was the premier Shona state in the region. In the religious aspect, Mutapa kingdom revolved around ritual consultation of spirits and a cult of royal ancestors. The ancestors advised the kings through mediums appointed by the court. These mediums maintained shrines within the capital. Usually, relatives of the king were appointed to administer the province as local lords. Over time, some of these lords became hereditary. The king was lord of the sun and the moon, king of the land of the rivers and conquerors of enemies. Natural resources were thought to have been created by Imwari and could only be exploited with the approval of the Mutapa, Imwari's earthly representative and custodian. When approaching the king, arms had to be left outside the city and approached on bare feet. By 1515, the Portuguese dominated much of Southeast Africa's coast, laying waste to Sofala and Kilwa. Their main goal was to dominate the trade with India. However, they unwittingly became mere carriers for luxury goods between Mutapa's sub-kingdoms and India. In terms of trade, the empire engaged in importing goods as well as in exporting them. Imports included such luxury goods as silk, ceramics, and glassware. Gold and silver were made into bracelets and other insignia of rule by local craftsmen. A cloth known as machira woven from local cotton was draped over the ruler's throne as a symbol of his kingly rule. Gifts were given by the king to officials and regional governors to ensure their loyalty. Trade was centrally regulated with weights and measures controlled by the courts. The Mutapa also regulated the volume of local produce on the international market to maintain a favorable balance of trade. During the 15th century, the Mutapa maintained unity and managed to restrict Portuguese attempts to gain control of the market and trade routes, exercising effective sovereignty. Mutapa proved invulnerable to attack and even economic manipulation due to the Mwene Mutapa's strong control over gold production. What posed the greatest threat was infighting among different factions, which led to opposing sides calling on the Portuguese for military aid. In 1607 and 1629, Mutapa signed treaties making it a Portuguese vassal and ceding gold mines, but none of these were ever put into effect. Another problem was that Mutapa's tributaries such as Kitev, Madanda, and Manika ceased paying tribute. At the same time, a new kingdom called Barwe emerged. All of this was hastened by Portugal retaining a presence on the coast and in the capital. At least one part of the 1629 treaty that was acted on was a provision allowing Portuguese settlement within Mutapa. In 1663, the Prazeros were able to depose a sitting Mutapa and put their own nominee on the throne. For several centuries, this trading empire enabled people across a large territory to live in peace and security under a stable government and succession of rulers. With primary records dating back to 1502, the empire was a prime testing ground for theories concerning economic, political, and religious development in pre-colonial Africa. It was worthy to note that the Mutapa was one of only 4 Shona states that was not entirely uprooted by new settlements of people, and the only one close to Portuguese centers, thus providing important data on contact and relationships between these and other Shona states, as well as with Europeans. The Mutapa Empire was an example of a working system of government in Africa and of a flourishing civilization, both of which were often assumed to have been absent before the coming of the Europeans.